Well, welcome to Let's Talk, and tonight we are looking at why more and more women are walking that journey to the health center to do that HIV test alone. Studies carried out by some community-based organizations show that most men in rural areas consider it a waste of time to accompany their wives for HIV tests. In the studio, we have two doctors, Dr. Monica Chizito. Welcome to NTV Weekend Edition.
Thank you.
And we also have Dr. Stephen Watiti. Welcome.
Thank you, Josephine.
I will start with you, Dr. Watiti. Tomorrow is World AIDS Day, every 1st of December, and I saw a book that you had written on conquering HIV/AIDS in Uganda. What inspired that?
I think it's because it's the story behind my life. I am a doctor. I've been working as a doctor for about 30 years. But incidentally, I'm also HIV positive. And with hindsight, maybe for about 20 years or so, I've been HIV positive, living with HIV. So the experience I've had, especially men who do not want to access care because of fear and so on. So the book which I've written is my story, but also interspersed with a lot of experience from my 30 years also.
Being a doctor.
A doctor, yeah.
Okay.
And mainly wanting to encourage people, especially men, to take the lead and take for care. I write about my personal experience, how I've lived with HIV and how God has helped me, and the medical treatment has helped me to conquer what I feel AIDS real, because I don't believe I'll die of AIDS because I have HIV.
An inspiring story. Doctor, how would you describe Uganda, where we are right now in the fight against AIDS? How are we doing?
I think we are in a good position, what I would call, I think, a turning point, because for the first time, there are now more people who are being put on ARVs than those who are being infected. We still have a big number of people who are being infected annually, but the number has come down.
Okay.
And we have over 500,000 or close to 600,000 people who are on treatment. Now, if this goes on happening, it means we're going to have fewer and fewer people getting infected, especially children. With the elimination of mother-to-child transmission using the option B+, meaning all pregnant mothers who are HIV positive being put on ARVs. It means we're going to have fewer and fewer. At the moment, we have about 15,000. That's still a big number, but it has dropped from 28,000, I think, in 2011 there. So we are doing well. We need to do more, and especially men, we need to work harder and push this disease, stop new infections, and then deal with those who are already infected.
Dr. Monica, the research that shows that men in rural areas do not want to accompany their wives, is there any truth to it?
I would say yes, because of our the health-seeking behaviors and the relationships of married people. Generally, you find people don't talk, people don't walk with each other in this marriage walk. So it's no wonder the health-seeking behaviors, it's usually the lady alone. And also in our healthcare systems, you find there's no space for the men. The place is already crowded, and sometimes they get disgusted. They just want to come and be first. So unless we create special rooms for them, make them feel welcome, some will come. But some do come, and that is encouraging, but the numbers are few.
What does it imply when a man will not escort his wife? Because someone will think maybe he has something to hide.
Yeah, I think as Dr. Monica puts it, I think it's to do with culture, but also this false thinking that if my wife goes, then maybe I would know. For example, if he's positive, then I'm positive. If she's negative, then thank God I'm negative. Now, that is not true, because we know what now that a condition known as discordancy, where two people in a sexual relationship, man and woman or whatever, they're in a sexual relationship, one can be positive while the other is negative. It's very common. So when your wife tests negative or your husband tests negative, it doesn't mean you are the same status, and vice versa. That's why it is always good to go for testing together. And then secondly, the beauty of it is that it removes that fear, because you know, when somebody is positive, sometimes they have fear telling your friend. Now, when you go together, I would prefer them going hand in hand.
And you actually have someone to...
Yes, to the doctor, say, doctor, this is my wife or this is my husband. We would like to test together so that we know together. Okay. That removes the sting from the disease, and you are counseled together as a couple, and that is that would make things easier. Unfortunately, the men, either out of fear or because of the culture, and are finding it hard. But also, as he mentioned, we do not have health-seeking behavior. For example, when you go to hospital and you are not sick, they say, why are you going to hospital and you are not sick? You should fall sick first. No. Health centers should be for repairing, but health is made at home. We should be able to go and check up, just like we go for
repairing and preventing.
Yeah, but just like you take your car even when it has no problem, take your body every year, really, every
for
year.
A check.
Yeah, for checkup.
Okay. What are these men missing from these visits when he doesn't accompany? For whatever reason he might have, he might be busy at work, or he just might not want to go to the hospital.
One of the things they would miss is also learning about their wife's status, because now, maybe as a family, you can act, but sometimes if they have not accompanied, she would also keep quiet. She would just say, he's not interested in knowing my status, and I won't reveal to him. So the family just goes on, and you never know, he may get infected along the way. And usually there is a lot of counseling support given.
Yes,
there are different, there is information given. So all that, you would miss it. And in case of any illness, sometimes you're also attended to. So they miss a lot in not coming together with their spouses.
Well, what would you advise these women to do? If my husband will not come with me for these checks, what do I do?
I would keep encouraging her, at least she needs to keep healthy. And also to get ways of talking to this gentleman. And sometimes can say, tell them I'm the one calling them. I want to see them and have a chat with them. So that somehow get a way of convincing him to come for the sake of the family. But sometimes we know our relationships in marriages are not so good and people blast each other, then that pushes him away.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think also, I mean, if a woman nags you or something, sometimes it can annoy. But also, as he mentioned, actually people don't talk. Somebody has made a joke that when you see two people in a car stuck in a jam, they're not talking, then most likely they're married. So people need to talk about other things. So when it comes to talking about hard things like HIV and other difficult issues, they would be able to talk. But it would be difficult to talk without quarreling or nagging when you have not been talking. So I would encourage husbands and wives to talk, look at each other and talk. I know it's not easy.
Culture has taught our women to be quiet.
Yeah, but also it has to do with character. You have to know your husband, know your wife. I personally, by the way, I find it difficult to talk, although I talk a lot. But my wife is luckily is good at it. Sometimes I just hold my head. You look at me and you talk. Yes, you talk. Talk about hard things. Talk about sex, because HIV is about sex. People don't talk about sex, and that is the difficult. And yet in office they're talking about sex to colleagues. Even in taxis, I hear people talk about sex. Why don't they talk to their spouses about sex? Their likes and dislikes, and that would make it easier, because really HIV is a sexually transmitted disease by far and wide in Uganda, and if we don't deal with our sexual behavior, we are not going to make it.
We're not really
Most of the new
the
infections are amongst married and cohabiting couples. So let them talk about sex, talk about HIV.
Okay. The research that was carried out shows men in rural areas. Do we see this trend coming to the men in the urban areas as well?
I think so. Of course, it was done in rural areas, but it's not any better here. In fact, it may be worse. I've had people sending each other text messages when they're in the same room. So they're here because they are more sophisticated. You can write and leave a message or send text message. I think the culture of not talking, we need to maybe to teach people to talk to each other, to this person whom you think is the best person in the world, talk to them. But of course, in the villages, is that also these men tend to sit with men, maybe in drinking places. But I think we need to encourage them. We need to go there and use FM radios, because normally I see, when I go to the village, I see husbands and wife digging together.
Yes.
That would be a great time to talk about it. Talk about politics, talk about the weather, but talk about HIV even when you're digging. Why not? I mean, you are alone, you can talk about these things. So whatever they are, I think we need to teach ourselves. But back to HIV, this disease should teach us to talk, because if we don't, HIV thrives actually on secrecy. Secrecy and fear and then it goes underground. People have seen people who are swallowing ARVs are not telling their husbands. People, their wives, you give them drugs, they remove the label, they call them multivitamins or food supplements. Shame. We need to do better, and men should lead the lead, take the lead.
Okay.
And that was one of the things that really drove me, because I thought I should show an example to men. I hope by believing openly with HIV, this could help men.
Okay,
especially.
I am going to come back to you, Dr. Stephen, about your story, but I'd like to hear from Dr. Monica about the culture, the urban man.
Yes.
What is his behavior pattern?
The behavior pattern is about the corporate society, the way, the hours we spend at work. You find men at work. From work, I would say maybe 50% would branch somewhere else, maybe to the bars and all that. And by the time they get home, it's late. So it's still being away from home that can contribute to some of these maybe reckless behaviors and getting
silence
us
anyway.
Yes, and the silence. Much as we may be more empowered in the urban part, still the communication is not good. Communication, I see with couples, it's more with their colleagues than spouses, because we've been involved in marriage counseling, and you say, have you talked to this? Or people entering marriage, have you discussed your status? Have you looked at this? And they're like, no. So we said, before you come back, make sure you've tested and discuss that. And then the other thing is HIV is a temporary, being negative is a temporary state. So there has to be ongoing testing, if it's at least once a year. Because today you may be negative, but that does not make you negative 3 months down the road. So it's something that we have to get into the habit of doing. I know many people test only for going out of Uganda, maybe studies, and sometimes
it is required.
Yes, if it's required, and maybe if they are getting married. But generally, people just prefer to live in that
denial.
Suspense.
Ignorance is bliss, they say.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Watiti, I will ask you to wrap this up for us by giving us a look into what it's been like for you. How have you managed to live? How many years is it?
I think about 28 years.
About 28 years. How have you managed to stay positive enough to even come on the show and speak openly and even write a book?
Well, I think what happened when I discovered in 1993 that I was HIV, but it was rather traumatic. Unfortunately, the next year, my wife passed on. And being a doctor, I knew that within the next 5 years, most likely I'll be dead. So I kept educating myself about the disease, what it caused it. Because I didn't know it, because in the medical school we were not taught about it. So when I educated myself, the more I knew about it, I asked questions, the more the fear got away from me. So when the fear got away, then I was able to talk to people in my practice. I started by sharing with some of my patients, and some of them got surprised. So it went on, it progressed. I grew real, I must say. Even me, I feared at first. But now I speak freely. I'm not stigmatized. I don't even think about death. Of course, I know I'll die one day. But I know now, because by swallowing ARV, and I've been on ARV since 2000, my CD4 is okay, my viral load is suppressed, and I'm not sick. And then recently I turned 60, so I knew, I could live a normal life. By Ugandan standards, I've lived beyond what normal Ugandans live. So the next 10 years, it's more or less bonus for me.
You'd given yourself 5 years.
More than 10 to reach 70, then after that I'll get up to 100. I made it up to 100. But anyway, back to your question. When you educate yourself and learn as much as possible, somehow the fear goes away. It's like light coming into the room. The more light you pump, the more bulbs you switch on, the more the darkness disappears. That is it. And that's why my little book about conquering HIV is really my journey. And I want to recommend people to come to my album, go to Tasso and other places where it is going to be. It's going to be launched tomorrow. Hope at Mbarara people can get this copy. And I hope especially the men that they can be able to read and be leaders. I have been so blessed this recently when our president openly went and symbolically tested for HIV, and I want to encourage men to do that.
To go for testing.
To lead.
Well,
because like all men, when danger comes in the house, a man should be in front and not women, and we have been ashamed, really.
We're currently seeing this generation, the women are taking the lead.
It's a shame. But I really want us to take back. Not that we push away the women, but in the face of danger, the men should go first.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Titi. And your final thoughts on this particular subject, just briefly.
So I just want to encourage all Ugandans that we need 2014 has to be a better year. We have to go back to our status of conquering HIV, and all of us as individuals, we have a role to play. And we had a theme of keep the promise, and each of us have to keep the promise of not infecting another person, and also doing something to make sure our nation is safe.
Well, thank you both so much for coming on the show. I certainly hope the message has been carried across, and that the men and the women as well will go for testing.